Draft pod time. That's right. We talked about an early 2026 look to the next year's draft class. Now we're getting into Broncos needs. Lots to evaluate going into this season. Who will the Broncos be seeking to upgrade at next year? Who could be the best guys to fit those needs? We get into it all starting now. DNVR Draft Pod. What's up, baby? We're doing it, as we like to say on this show, live from downtown Denver on the corner of Colfax and York, right above the DNVR bar.
That's true.
And not the Toyota Lounge, the beautiful studio. Jake Schwanman.
Yes.
Filming some great content down in Boulder.
Oh, interesting.
Justin doing great work down in Fort Collins.
Whatever, yeah.
And I've got Hank. We missed you. You were at OTA's last episode.
Yes, I was.
How was that?
It was good. You know, It's one of those things where you go and then all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, yeah, this isn't a place where you actually learn all that much. Like, well, what you do learn is, like, some of the rotations are interesting. And you're like, oh, he's subbing in here. He's playing with the starters. Or like, oh, they're rotating everybody into this spot except him. But then you're not allowed to say any of that anyway.
That's true.
So then you just wind up with like, every receiver made a play at some point. The quarterbacks really were fine. Not a lot of big plays. The trenches were, unpadded. And so you can't take anything too seriously. But the edge rushers look good. Like, they're just, training camp is where you learn things. Mini camp is like, oh, okay, here we are. It's good to get you guys some work in.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked some good stuff about Q, Savion,
Yes.
Pat Bryant. So obviously check out The Daily Show, which you are.
Yes.
Also, should mention, it's our big day, which is awesome. Big Brothers Big Sisters was a phenomenal partner on our draft coverage, our live draft shows, which was tons of fun. They were also a sponsor for the NFL on draft night. You could see them on stage. And today we are raising funds for them. Such a great organization. So meaningful what they do for young people in our community who need it. So many, especially boys, are on their list. They need more mentors for them. So if you can, that's can be really rewarding. What you can do for a young person to simply make them feel seen, make them feel heard, make them feel recognized. And what that could do for you could be really rewarding as well. So if you can, check out how you can volunteer. And if you can't, I would urge you to donate if here on the link and support them that way, because what they can do can really change people's lives and, change our community. Just one person can make such a difference when they're impacted positively. So shout out to Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Shout out to all of you who've already donated a bunch on the channel. Thank you so much. And shout out to Richard Esperanza over here. Lil Dre, what up, my man? Okay. Yeah, Hank, we want to talk some needs today.
Yes.
Looking out into the future.
Yes. It's different than when we've done this podcast in the past, because typically the Broncos have gone into seasons with needs. It's like
really obvious pressing.
It's like, oh, you really should have done this last offseason, but there's only so much you can do in any offseason. And at this point, like, you look at the roster and say, right now, the Broncos don't really have any needs. They just don't. And so it's a little bit different exercise when you're looking ahead to what needs will they have in 6 months, because you aren't starting from a place where you're like, well, obviously you need this, obviously you need this, and then you can't branch out. You got to kind of branch out right away.
Yeah. Where do you want to start here?
Well, typically with this stuff,
Kind of feels like the headliner might be the defensive line.
Yeah, I think you start by looking at the free agents for next year.
Yeah.
And so the defensive line, Zach Allen's going to be a free agent. John Franklin Myers is a free agent. Malcolm Roach is a free agent. Even, like Matt Henningsen is a free agent. And he's been a guy who like in his rookie year wound up on the field quite a bit. Past couple years, more of like practice squad, like 7th option, which means not on the roster, but over the course of the season gets a couple looks. So you're not only losing like the big names, there's also like the depth isn't really there. And so if you were to look at the defensive line for next year, under contract right now, you basically have like maybe 3 guys. If you were to say DJ Jones, Jordan Jackson, and Ini Uwazurike, and I guess Savion Jones, you have like 4 guys right there, and not necessarily like starters, but just like people who could be on the football field if you really need them to. So that's where the needs start.
Yeah. And now you do have Savion Jones, at least, who I think can kind of slot in the John Franklin Myers spot.
Exactly. Yep. And that's...
I'm surprised Sean hasn't gone after a beefier defense and like bigger nose tackle types.
Yeah. But I mean, that's just their scheme is they aren't looking for a clogger. They want penetrators. You know, it's all one gap system. Like you're just looking, at least in the Vance Joseph defense, you just want somebody who you can say, we need you to not let anybody through that A gap. And usually the best way to do that is just get through that gap yourself. And there are some defenses that you say, like, we don't want anybody coming through either of these. So kind of just play the block, play those angles, and at the very least, make sure that you're keeping things clear so that the linebacker behind you can fill it up if you're not able to get there. But when you're not looking for stout, you're looking for more burst. That's why DJ Jones has played as well as he has the past couple of years, because it's just especially last year. I guess last year was the big change where they really leaned heavy into that.
That's what I felt too.
Yeah. And I think you look beyond him to Ini Uwazurike, who I still think is going to be a really good football player, as again, he has the size to go on top of the fact that like those quick feet, the burst, you could make the case maybe more 3-tech, but I think as a DJ Jones backup, makes some sense, which could be bad news for Malcolm Roach, really.
Yeah. And I guess with Roach, at least, no, Roach would be up too.
Roach is also up.
Yeah. And then DJ just has 1 more year.
2 more. This year.
Well, I'm talking about 2. We're in next offseason, right?
Yeah. So he has 25, 26, 27.
I would assume you keep Zach Allen. Do you need some Zach Allen insurance? Like, is he playing too many snaps?
I don't think
so. Is Savion enough?
I think because he played so many snaps last year and Sean just kept saying this is what makes him special and not like, oh, we really need to do something about this. I think that that's part of the plan. I think that when you look at like DJ Jones, he usually hovers right below 50% of the snaps. You look at like a John Franklin Myers and it's like more than 50, but probably less than like 3/4. And so that's where you rotate Savion in with John Franklin Myers. You obviously rotate Roach in with DJ, and then you wind up with Zach Allen, in theory, is on the field for every snap. But of course, there will be times where he's off the field. And so whether that's Savion Jones, whether that's like potentially even like a Jordan Jackson, maybe that's where Ini Uwazurike fits in. Malcolm Roach also is versatile enough that you bump him from like the nose to the 3-tech. That can be space. It just depends on how many of the DJ Jones snaps you're filling in for. But I guess when you're nickel, the nose tackle isn't as important, so you don't have to worry about that. That's kind of where I think it stands. And I think it's why this group is just so well built right now, is that the roles just fit together perfectly, and then you have to make the tough decisions.
So it sounds like maybe if they keep Zach Allen, say they keep, Roach for an extra year, you lose JFM.
Yep.
The need doesn't feel that immediate on the interior defensive line.
No, assuming things go well, assuming you leave this year saying like, Savion Jones looks like a 3rd-round pick should look. He looks like a guy who we trust. Assuming Ini Uwazurike takes like, at the very least, a half step.
Well,
you don't need him to be great, but to the point where you say like, hey, if he's our 6th, we feel good about him as like our 6th.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're built out completely.
Look, that might work out nicely because there's not a ton of D linemen I have high on next year's watch list, aside from Peter Woods, who both Jake and I had in our top 10 going into next season. That's at any position for Clemson. And then, there's like Keldrick. What was the Auburn kid? I had him right here. Falk. Keldrick Falk, who, has some real upside as an interior pass rusher out of Auburn. But outside of that, there's not a ton of names. It doesn't feel like a loaded interior D-line class.
Interesting.
So that might be internal solutions, develop guys like Savion, like Uzurike, or hit up the free agent market.
What were we saying about the defensive line class last year at this point? At that point, do you remember if we were saying like, well, you have, let's see, I guess we would have known Mason Graham is the big name. Yep. He was still big at the time. Walter Nolan, I don't remember if we were high on him.
No, definitely weren't.
Other Michigan tackle.
So I was really high on Deion Walker coming into the season. Okay. Mason Graham was in the mix for sure. Mm-hmm. Landon Jackson was pretty high on my list. Yep. Tyleek Williams, who ended up going late first, was pretty high.
So not necessarily like a spot where last year, at least, there were just these late bloomers and the class turned out to be better. It was more so just...
There were at least 4 guys I was pretty high on.
And they shifted around a bit, but yeah. Okay. So that is interesting. Again, it's like a weird team building situation when you say like Zach Allen, $25 million a year. Is that the price? Is it... is John Franklin Myers, given the inflation, now worth $10 million a year instead of like 7.5? Is like Malcolm Roach, $3.5 million per year is what they gave him, and he's still just like rotational defensive lineman. Maybe that is still 3.5. Maybe it doubles. Maybe it goes up to 7. So I'm kind of. It's tough to say what exactly they'll do when there's a piece of me that thinks that they could bring back all 3 of those guys for like $30 million. And there's also a piece of me that thinks like, yeah, it could be 40.
I really thought we'd be talking D-line. So this is interesting. I'm glad we did this exercise because I also hadn't realized that the next year's class was kind of on the light side.
And it might be just a spot where you say, like this year, they draft Savion Jones, which means you're assuming things go well, you don't need to bring John Franklin Myers back. Yeah. Maybe next year they say, hey, in the 3rd round, we can take our nose tackle. And then if we want to move on from DJ Jones a year early, we can do that after the next season. Or maybe it's Zach Allen. So to me, assuming they keep Zach Allen and one of the other 2, it still shouldn't be a need. Although it never hurts to keep adding to that spot.
I'd agree. Right. I mean, it's why the trade up for Savion in retrospect looks kind of nice. Like keep staying ahead of that. Stay deep. That's like how teams like the Eagles and Chiefs have been built, is depth on the offensive and defensive lines.
And I think with Savion...
And just keep hammering away.
The reason I'm high on him now is because when they drafted him and you see 6'5", 280, an edge moving inside, you think at first like, okay, this isn't the biggest guy. Like 300 pounds is kind of like, okay, this is a big dude. Yeah. At 280, you're like, oh, okay. But then you see him on the field and it's like, oh, there's 2 heads that stand way above everybody else. And it's him and it's Ini Uzurike. And you're just like, these are your 2 massive dudes in there. Yeah. And at this point, when I see that, it's like, I can't see this guy not being serviceable at the very least.
We've got our guy Jose in the chat. What up, Jose? He's talking about the next big need. You did talk about, there's no obvious needs to Jose. I think there is coming into this on the Toyota chat. Yeah. And we love Jose for it. We love talking linebackers. We'll keep talking front 7 and then get into some offensive stuff. Yeah. On the other side of this break, where I want to tell you about Hall of Fame bets. It's this awesome new website. First off, I didn't realize how I've just like played around on it myself. I didn't realize how their app is so highly rated. And I mean, their pitch is amazing. Like it's always hard. It always feels like such a huge risk to put in a parlay with them and all the data they can provide. It doesn't feel like that. And they've got all sorts of advanced data on all of the different props you can find and you can connect your app and your account to the different sports books that you need. MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, college sports, you name it. They've got the app. They've got the website. They've got a 4.9 rating in the App Store on over 6,000 5-star reviews. Our listeners, on top of all this, get a 7-day free trial and 50% off their first month. That just download the HOF app or visit hofbets.com and use code DNVR at checkout. For a limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, but they also get that 50% off the first month when they use our code DNVR at checkout. Just download the HOF app on iOS or Android or visit hofbets.com, enter code DNVR, and you're all set. And then very apropos app for us is FanStake. FanStake, usually Jake tells you about this, but it's an awesome app where you can contribute to the NIL funds being given to, specifically the Colorado CU Buffs, both your favorite recruits that are being targeted or your favorite players on the team to keep retaining them and give them more fan and financial support. And it's risk-free. Fans can place stakes for a specific athlete, join or stay their school, and if the athlete decides to go elsewhere, you get your money back. It's very nice. If the player does not go to your school, you're eligible to sign an NIL deal with FanStake and receive. If the athlete then does, they're eligible to receive that. It's really cool. CU is currently the 5th most popular fan base. So incredible, but you can always get those numbers up. FanStake currently offering new fans a free $25 credit, which think thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, millions in fact, who listen to this channel every single month.
Yeah.
If all of them took the free $25 and invested it into the CU fund, I don't even know that FanStake would want this, but you could instantly create an NIL fund that was bigger than the richest backers at even Texas A&M, for example.
Or I just got offered a 2 times boost. Cooper Flag to Montana.
Whoa!
So if I just wanted to give Cooper Flag like $5 million, probably doubles it, $10 million, maybe I can keep him out of the NBA draft and at Montana.
Incredible. No credit card required or strings attached. I encourage everyone to join me in staking I'm going Jordan Seaton's my guy, big seat.
Yep.
Keep him at Colorado. We'll be talking about him next year's draft pod. He's going to be a blue chipper on the offensive line
because of his big seat.
2027. Yeah, I have a big seat, no doubt. Add anything you'd like about the player. Big seat. He's the best. Click the link in our description, scan the QR code, or just head to fanstake.com and use promo code DNVR to help Jordan Seaton stay with the Buffs or your favorite recruits to join. Okay, Hank. Back at it.
Yeah.
Bring up Jose's comment, would you, real quick?
Yeah.
And then we'll talk to Broncos tube as well, the legend. Jose just saying that for the 21st year in a row, he'll be looking at inside linebacker. Singleton is free agent. Greenlaw is technically a 1-year deal. And Drew Sanders has wasted 2 years of development due to injury and position change. So that's a need he'll be looking at. And I mean, for sure, linebacker was kind of next on my list as well.
Yeah. It's so first, Dre Greenlaw's contract, Broncos can get out of it after 1 year.
Yeah.
I think it's a 3-year deal, but if things don't go well, then they have the option to move on.
There's no 100% certainty in that linebacker room.
Nope, certainly not. I'm curious what the Broncos would think of a rookie linebacker. I think that might be a spot where
Hank.
A veteran makes more sense. Just because obviously there's a smart coach once told me, as I've said on the Broncos podcast, Deion's old coach told me, Chris Wilson, who won a Super Bowl as a defensive line coach with the Eagles, coaching Chris Long and all those big names they had back then, Fletcher Cox. he was DC at Colorado. One of the things he said is in the NFL, they say for every rookie you start, you lose a game. So like if the talent level is this and you play in 3 rookies, take 3 off because they're just not trustworthy, because there's going to be whatever mistakes, and over the course of the year they add up. And at linebacker in particular, that's a spot where there's big questions, because that's a really important position. That's the brains of your defense. So if you come out of this year saying like we need a linebacker, it wouldn't surprise me to see if they go the veteran route. And just looking ahead,
what if it's Dre Greenlaw does work out, all's well, you're just ready to move on from Singleton, and the linebacker market has become a little bloated, and you say, I still trust Sternad as a solid backup. Maybe you move on from Drew Sanders. We just need a second 2-down starter to pair with Dre. For
other Dre.
Not me,
yes.
Mr. Greenlaw, to pair with him. And
you could.
That's the route you
Yep. It's definitely possible.
Does the concerns of that player being a rookie get eased a bit?
It's part of the reason why I still have pretty high hopes for Drew Sanders, is because I think if you put him next to an Alex Singleton or Dre Greenlaw, there's a lot of communication that needs to be done. The linebacker's talking to the safety's helping get the corners set up, the linebacker's helping the front get set up. There's a lot going on. So to just say like, okay, before every snap, just tell Drew what to do, like that would be a bigger ask than maybe it sounds like. But there is something there. And I think that's where I think Drew Sanders could work out. I think that's the case for the rookie in the same boat, being like, do you really trust this guy? That's how you get around to trusting him. 2 rookies would be crazy. Free agents, Devin Lloyd would be out there. One of our favorites, Quay Walker, will be out there. And there's some good linebackers.
These guys hit the market though.
It's possible. I mean, somebody will, and they're better linebackers. Matt Milano also. But I think obviously the odds of them going into next year with Greenlaw and Singleton as the starting linebackers are probably pretty slim.
Yeah,
just Singleton with the age,
I would agree.
And Singleton with the way his career is unfolded, his body might be more like 28 than it is 31. I think Greenlaw with the injuries, but again, like there's a chance one of them doesn't work out. There's a chance both of them don't work out. I don't know if they'd be willing to roll with Sternad. I think you might run into some interesting scenarios where you say like, okay, we can have Sternad starting and we can use a pick on a receiver, or we can have like, is that a position where you're willing to invest more? Is it not? I'm not sure. It's a weird one, but it definitely seems like some change is probably on the way.
It's a weird linebacker class as well. Texas has an absolute superstar in Anthony Hill.
Okay.
Super athletic.
Huh.
Like 3-down linebacker, just rangy, sideline to sideline, has racked up a ton of tackles for a loss. Just like Jade Barron was the first rounder to come out of that Texas defense last year. Byron Murphy was the guy 2 years ago. Anthony Hill should be the next Longhorn first round, top 20 type defender. After that, the only other guys I have on this early big board I've put together are more strong side linebackers, like undersized guys who really are more built to be strong side backers in a 4-3. If you remember rookie Von Miller, he's playing in a 4-3 as a stand-up like three-man linebacker, and still racked up the pressure that way. Khalil Mack as a rookie,
Drew Sanders-y in a way. So like, while it doesn't feel like that's the need,
that's right.
It is something they've gone after before.
That's right, and that's guys like Harold Perkins, who we've hyped up for a couple years. He's got a bit of the LSU. The problem with Brian Kelly was like a dominant edge rusher as a freshman, moved to linebacker, injuries, maybe not as effective. And then another kid who's in that vein is undersized edge rusher. His name is crazy at Ole Miss. What the hell? Where'd he go on me?
Where did he go?
Okay. All right. Well, that doesn't matter. I'll talk about. No, that's Perkins.
Perkins, isn't it?
Suntarine Perkins of Ole Miss. That's why I needed. And then there's Jeremiah Tallender out of Tennessee. So a lot of SEC talent. Tallander's more of an off-ball linebacker. I think he could be intriguing. But yeah, not a loaded class. You know, I mean, that's linebacker classes as of late. They're not the most talent rich.
And I sneaky might go safety. Because again, if you're thinking positions where... So do you trust a rookie to start is a big question. And I think that if you're...
Safety's a tough one.
Exactly.
Safety's all instincts and IQ.
If you're a well-built team, in theory, your rookies aren't starting. They're kind of rotating in.
For sure.
Next year, your starters are Brandon Jones and Talanoa Funga. Unless something goes horribly wrong, those are your starters. But PJ Locke's contract is up after this year. You also signed Sam Franklin this year to a guaranteed 1-year deal to be your special teams ace at safety. There's a real chance those are the 4 guys you're keeping on the roster. And maybe like JL Skinner earns like a 5th spot, but Franklin could be gone. Locke could be gone, leaving just your 2 starters. That 3rd safety job wide open. And to bring a guy in and say like, oh, that's not really a need, that would be surprising. Well, again, you just drafted Jahdae Barron. And I think that this would be very much in that mold, saying this is a really good player, assuming there's one on the board, who we can let develop slowly and, you know, can work in whatever ways, can learn things and make it easier to move on from somebody in the future. Or like maybe you get so good, you know, the Eagles trade CJ Gardner-Johnson this offseason. Like, could you do that? The Eagles save money cutting Darius Slay, James Bradbury. And I didn't watch enough to say like, these guys are both great players still, but probably good enough that teams are going to want him. If that's like a Hufanga or Jones, because something is more like, he's a good starter and not a great starter. Then all of a sudden you could move on, save some money, open up, and a 3rd safety in the draft would really create some flexibility.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had it on my sheet as kind of a question mark. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. It's not too dissimilar to the linebacker conversation.
Yeah.
With BJ just being under contract for what, 1 year more than Singleton?
Greenlaw is this year, next year, and the year after.
No. How many more years does BJ have versus Singleton? 1 year?
Who is BJ?
Brandon Jones.
Okay, I was thinking PJ. I was thinking you meant Greenlaw. There we go.
I blank on his name.
Brandon Jones. No, you were right. I was wrong. Brandon Jones, I believe, would have this year and maybe just next year. And again, like played well. Have no reason to want to move on from him. But again, it's a spot where if you did want to make the move, then all of a sudden it could open it up. So yeah, they could get out after this year if they wanted to, but he does have another year on the deal. And at this point, it looks like that's a pretty good deal for the Broncos.
Yeah, it really does. That's interesting.
So
that's where I could see them going a veteran route.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I mean, George Payton, come day 3, let him load up on DBs as he's kind of done.
Savion Jones. That's the same thing where, you know, if Brandon Jones would have 1 year left on the contract, could a 2nd round pick develop for a year and be ready to sub in? It's possible. A 1st round pick you would think absolutely would be, but who knows? Maybe that's a waste of resources.
Yeah. The high-end safeties are there in next year's class. Caleb Downs obviously being the outlier. Almost certainly the Broncos won't be bad enough to have a sniff at
Sean
him.
will trade up.
Yeah.
Maybe not for something that isn't a big need.
Kamari Ramsey at USC is intriguing to me as maybe more of a physical specimen, Enuari type of this class. So that'd be fun. I think with you bringing up safeties, that covers the defense.
Edge isn't a need.
Okay.
If you
beat me to it.
If you re-sign Nick Benito, you have this year and 2 more with your entire edge room intact. So with Q, with Cooper, with Jonah Ellis, with Dondre, like you've got Dondre 5 guys under contract for 3 years who you want to hold on to if you get the Benito deal done. If you don't get the Benito deal done, totally different conversation.
Mess around and just give Benito a franchise tag. First off, what's the money look like? It's pretty high, right?
It probably
top 10 edge. That's in the at least mid-20s, I would assume.
The good part of the deal is that it's the average of the top 5 over the past 5 years. And so like there's some positions where things go like
wonky.
It's like, oh, in the past 2 years, things have just shot up, and so you still have something weighing it down. I could check edge franchise tag though. I think those are typically ones where I don't think they have edge, right? Do they just have linebacker and defensive end? Which I think, yeah. So Franchise tag for linebacker is $25 million, $22 million for defensive end. So, I mean, he's probably pretty easily linebacker. There's no case for him to be defensive end. So $25 million this year. Next year, maybe it's more like 30. You could tag him. I think the deal, if you get him for less than $25 million, it's a good deal. He shouldn't cost too much more than that. If you tag him and give him, if it is $28 million, 30, you're probably overpaying. If push comes to shove and you got to give him an extra $3 million bucks, in order to extend the negotiating window, it's not the end of the world.
I can't imagine there's many position groups in the NFL that have a better combination of current NFL talent, depth, and youth than the Broncos do, and than the Broncos edge room does. So
exactly.
Okay. No, that's a good qualifier. You beat me to my question. So good for you. Let's hit a quick break. On the other side, we're going to get into the offensive side. Shout out to our friends at Toyota. You know Toyota. They are such a great partner, such a great car. The perfect Colorado car. They have so many SUV for trucks, 4-wheel and all-wheel drive options. The perfect car to take out, get lost, drive west, young man, get lost in the mountains, do some exploring. The perfect family car, and such a reliable, wonderful car. Anyone who drives a Toyota at the DNVR swears by it, has some amazing stories of how kept their family safe, how they had great customer service experience, how durable their car has been, you name it. And they also offer, all sorts of environmentally friendly, low and zero emission vehicles, as many as any other automotive maker. So visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL, the official vehicle of DNVR. Let's go places. And shout out to our new friends at Branded Bills. Branded Bills got some great hats. Some
Montana Grizzlies hats.
Is that right?
So many options.
Oh man, and I bet gotta make no crazy upside down logos like you like your Montana hats.
Nice and normal, just real
right side up.
They know how to make a hat there.
Also some great Rams hats, if you're proud to be. Also some great state flag hats. Yeah.
Interesting.
You got state pride, Hank?
I do.
You can rock some Branded Bills hats. No, they rule.
On the website, too, it just gives you the map and you just click on the state.
That's right.
You don't have to type in Montana or whatever.
And my hat sources, I have many all over.
Oh, yes.
Tell me these fit and quality as good as any hats in the biz. Wow. I've heard really good things about their rope hats, Hank.
Interesting. The rope hats.
That's right.
I don't have many rope hats.
No, but you're a golfer, right?
Yeah.
You're a huge golfer.
Yeah.
The rope hats are often called the golf hats.
Really?
Did you not know this?
You're
a hat guy. You're supposed to know.
I got to talk to these Branded Bill guys.
Oh boy. If you, like Hank and I, are a hat guy, gal, however, whatever, I love you. You love hats? Check them out. Head to brandedbills.com and use code BBDNVR for 15% off your first order. I've been really tongue-tied on these, Hank. So
they have so many hats.
Yeah, no, they have lots of hats.
Just the volume of hats is really impressive.
Yep, it's great stuff. Just reminding you, this is our big day, raising some donations for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Amazing organization, and something we care about so much. It's such a privilege to be able to do this on a day like this, to be able to raise money to just build more support network for young people in our community who would benefit from it. And, that can be so life-changing for a person in their formative years to get that outside support they need. And, I just think of all the mentors I had growing up and how important they were for me. And that's something you can do for someone today. You can change someone's life today. So check it out. Donate button right there. Links in the description as well. And the show doesn't have to be live. If you're listening to this on audio, you can head to our YouTube channel. anytime this week, click on any of our videos and click the donate button right there and contribute to this amazing cause. So thank you so much. So much love to you all. We've just had an outstanding day, so I really, really appreciate it. Okay.
I'm counting 81 different Montana flag hats.
Whoa.
All of them, I believe, with at least 3 different color choices.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them with up to 12 is the most I've found. We're talking potentially thousands of Montana hats.
You guys got Hank. Congratulations.
I'm just gonna be looking at hats all night.
Yep.
I'm
That's
gonna
great.
get killed by my girlfriend.
That's really great. Yeah. The
Do you
women
really
we
need
live
another
with,
hat?
They don't want
Yeah.
more hats.
I see you bought more hats.
How are you storing your hats?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So the worst way I store them, the one that gets me in the most trouble, is that so sometimes I get home and I kind of sit down on my couch and I take my hat off and I set it on like the back of the couch behind me.
Oh man.
And then if I don't pay it a lot of attention,
Lucia puts the remote there and it drives me crazy.
sometimes you wind up with like 3 hats on the couch and you guess,
Oof.
why are there so many hats on the couch?
Holy cow. That
I
drive
filled
me
up my
crazy.
hat shelf. Now I have like underneath the TV, there's like on the TV stand, there's a spot where
man.
actually Lexi started putting my hat. So I was like, I guess that's acceptable. So there, if you look in any room, there's probably a hat.
Yeah, it's a problem
So
I
many
have.
hats. And then you forget
For
the
a while
hats
I
that
was
you
storing
have.
them in my car, but then they got a little
that's right.
sun.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
right?
tough.
Isn't that terrible?
That is terrible.
My like vintage Mitchell and Ness with the like Super Bowl 32 side patch.
Wow.
I know.
And get like hopping on late. We definitely gonna need defensive tackle next year. Again, if your defensive tackles are DJ
Adam
Jones,
Valentine
Malcolm
gets
Roach, and then Uzrike, whoever, and then you can always bump around Zach Allen.
Yep.
Like I don't know.
Adam, yeah, the conclusion we came to is it's possible if you re-sign, Zach Allen and then you keep Roach or find a facsimile replacement of Roach. JFM Savion Jones might just be swapped out and maybe
Which is
D-line, interior D-line, not as big a need as I certainly thought coming into this show.
The Roach replacement thing is interesting too. Because like Roach, you give him 2 years, $3.5 million each, and you're like, oh, okay, there you go. This is like good rotational piece. He's outplayed that contract. So now if he's cost double because he's proven himself so much, you can go find another one of those guys, with the difference being Sean knew Malcolm Roach because he coached him before.
Yeah.
So was that insight the reason why the signing worked so well? Could you just hit the market again with another guy and have the same success? I don't know. But it's very interesting though. And it's one reason why if you need to give an extra $1 million, $2 million to Malcolm Roach to bring him back, there's a case to do it. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Where do you want to go on offense?
Well, your highest paid free agent who is leaving is Courtland Sutton.
Yeah.
We've been wondering for years if Courtland Sutton would leave. Let's live in a world where Courtland Sutton leaves.
Yes, let's.
So you're left with Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Devon Vele, Pat Bryant. Let's say all of them have just medium years. Step forward. You're not saying like, oh my goodness, he's a 1,000-yard receiver. Or like put him in the Pro Bowl. Does that make wide receiver a massive need? Could it be that it's not even a need at all because you have so many guys, you bump them all up, and like if you 4 guys each with 700 yards, hey, maybe that's enough.
I would venture to say that would be massive, maybe a smidge excessive, but it's not outlandish.
Certainly first round in play.
It's, yeah.
Yep. And I would add that obviously you lose Courtland and disappointing years from all the young guys, then it's a massive, massive need. But in a world where like Pat Bryant, let's say Pat Bryant goes for 1,000 yards as a rookie.
One of them breaks out and then it's not
other guys have more like 500,
Yes.
600.
Right.
I would still be tempted to take one. I would still be tempted to take one if you're not seeing steps from the other 3, but one breaks out. If you see steps and a breakout, then you're probably good. Or at the very least, it's like, hey, let's use a 5th rounder and see what happens.
Likelihood of that?
And that was the final piece. Is I think the most likely scenario is in a world where Courtland Sutton is gone, you want a receiver, and we're talking about 1st round receiver again next year. I think that's most likely.
Yeah,
because I think there's a world in which you give a 1,000 get 1,000 yards from another receiver, and you still say we want to draft one. So I think or at the very least, it's in play. So I think first round receiver will be in play if Courtland Sutton is gone. If Courtland Sutton is back, you probably run it back because you have Vele under contract, Mims, Franklin, Bryant. So Courtland with Sutton, that's 5. There's always room for 6. Not a lot of special teams usage other than like return, but like punt team, not a lot of usage. I would say you probably with Sutton back don't add another unless you're really disappointed by what you see. Unless in a world where you say like, hey, maybe we cut Devon Vele, maybe we do whatever we do. But I think that's the odds are slim of that.
It would not be what I expected going into the Sean Payton tenure that we would see wide receiver consistently be a need and them adding top 100 rookie wide receiver after top 100 rookie wide receiver and not have added an offensive lineman yet.
True.
Like if you had presented me with that scenario 2 years ago, yes?
Yep.
Going into the Sean Payton experience, I would have bet the opposite.
Top of the 4th round, you get Troy Franklin. 2nd round, you get Mims.
Yes.
Pat 3rd round, you get Pat Bryant. Vele, you find is playing well enough to fit. Like, it's in some ways, it makes you wonder. The fact that we're even considering adding another receiver, it makes you wonder if that's the way to build a receiver room. Makes you wonder if instead investing big into one thing instead of all these little investments. That is
something we have talked about.
And
I mean, think how well it's worked out in the edge rusher room. Yeah. You know, like those are some really nice young pieces you've got.
Nick Bonito, late in the 2nd round, steal is what we learned.
Jonathan Cooper, 7th. Yep. Jonah Ellis already shown a lot of promise. Q Robinson feels really nice. Did the Rockies just lose on a walk-off?
They did, and it was a really painful one. So they scored in the 11th to go up by 1. 2 outs, runner on 3rd. You're 1 out away, and 1 out away, and it's just a little squeaker home run from James Wood over the center field fence. That breaks my heart.
You hate to see it. You hate to see it.
That was for the winning record in the past 15 games. Oh, no, they already have the winning record in the past 15. Now it's 500 in the last 16.
Feels like a weird wide receiver class, Hank.
Interesting.
Yep.
Weird in what way? Like undersized and speedy, or like weirdly big?
That I would project out right now. It feels like potentially the weakest wide receiver class of the 2020s, where we've been spoiled, right? I mean, the 2020s is where kind of what we've been projecting for years really came out to bear of like 4 wide receivers are the norm in college football, and that's just going to produce a lot of talent. And I think at a certain point there was bound to be a slight shortage of talent. And I think that's kind of happening. What we were talking about in last episode is it might even be one of those where, 25 wide receivers, pretty dang good. 26 wide receivers, a little weaker. And 27 wide receivers with Williams from Alabama and Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State.
Just ridiculous.
Otherworldly.
And
Jordan Tyson, who you like a lot, I think could have a massive year for the Sun Devils, 2 years removed from that knee injury. Zachariah Branch is a guy I'm really high on. There's plenty of like promising wide receivers at blue blood programs that have produced high-end wide receivers like Denzel Boston at Washington, Carnell Tate at Ohio State, Antonio Williams at Clemson, but unproven.
I wonder if Courtland would take a 1-year extension. And you just say, well, let's lock in this group for let's do it this year, let's do it next year. Because the thing about
and that gives you a gap year on, because at a certain point you do have it's what scares me a little bit about the edge rusher thing is if all these guys pan out, you're going to have a bit of a headache with having to pay all these dudes in 2 years.
And that's where you start trading though.
Yeah,
that's it. For sure. You get to pick your favorites and you get to pick your role players, because hopefully things go well for the Broncos, and in that world, the Ohio State receiver, the Bama receiver, those guys are like they look like top 5 picks, top 10 picks. You're not gonna be able to touch them, but because they're in the class, it bumps everybody else down. So even if you're not able to go get one of those big names in 2027,
that's right.
There would be some guys who otherwise might be you reach for them in the top 10. Well, guess what? Now they're there at 23, and that might be where the value is. So if you could get Sutton back for one more year, and how old is he now? Because I wonder.
I want to say 29.
Let's see.
Right
He
there
is
on the cusp.
29, turns 30 in October. So you'd pay, so he'd be 30 at the end. So 31 at the end of the year you give him. And then at that point, if you want to bring him back, you would think the price tag's probably going down a bit.
But maybe you have a much more real idea of like our Vele, our Troy Franklin, our Pat Bryant, our Marvin Mims, like actual keepers.
Yeah. And you could even give him a 2-year extension that makes it easy to get out after one extended year. So I would probably bring Courtland Sutton back unless you have some crazy plan to, like, I don't know. Jamar Chase is going to be a free agent. We're going to go but like he isn't even going to be. So I don't know who the options would be.
Could be.
They just
essentially is a year-by-year contract.
Okay. So like, again, like you could go that way, but I'd rather just say, hey, Court, give me 2 years. We'll give you the out. We'll take the out after the first year, and we'll call
that receiver market is crazy expensive.
Yeah,
crazy expensive.
Yep.
So it makes sense to go more with the draft route.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, someone who's not expiring next year but is a year out from being expiring are Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey. The two kind of key signings for Sean Payton when he starts off as the Broncos head coach. Would it be worth drafting their future replacements a year out? So by the time they're forced into starting jobs, that you at least have a year under their belt. I know we were kind of feeling like next year might just be the year to finally go after an O-Lineman, finally draft one. And that is a group that projecting out ahead feels quite promising in next year's draft. There's actually a ton of options at offensive line. Both Utah offensive tackles, Bama's left tackle, Miami's right tackle. It is quite a promising class on the offensive line.
Yep. So I do think that this is probably the year you go offensive line.
I would think so too. And then it's not even just Powers and McGlinchey, right? You're looking at a center as well.
Yeah. So the way it works is McGlinchey's contract is up after this year. So he's in a contract year. Behind him, of course, Alex Forsythe, who would have one more year. So if you believed in him to patch it together, or maybe you're willing to extend him, sure. You have Nick Gargiulo, 7th round pick last year. So he's another guy in that competition. We really like Clay Webb, the undrafted free agent. So you have a few guys kind of in the barrel. And typically you'd say, like, nothing trustworthy there other than the fact that they did choose to start Luke Wattenberg, a 6th round pick, after 2 years of him being on the practice, or was he practice squad? Back to the roster at the very least. I don't expect them to extend Luke Wattenberg. I think that if you're willing to give the $10 million a year or whatever to Luke Wattenberg, why wouldn't you have just given it to Lloyd when you let Lloyd Cushenberry walk? I think that now,
Sean has liked highly rated centers before.
True. Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's a team building philosophy of we don't pay centers. I think Lloyd Cushenberry was just the center he didn't want to pay.
Yeah, it could be.
And I think Wattenberg might just be another center he doesn't want to pay.
Yeah, I think Wattenberg has been good. And for the price, he's been incredible. Like the fact that you're paying less than $2 million for a guy who looks like a top half of the league type starting center, awesome. I don't know that I wouldn't say he's better than Lloyd was, So I don't think that he's enough better that you would extend him because you think he's a better player. And maybe they thought that he was good back at the time, and that's why they were willing to let Lloyd walk, because they say these are the same guy and we're willing to do it.
And in fairness, I think the entire O-line has gotten a real Bo Nix bump.
True. Absolutely.
Like the
Quinn Miners
underlying
bump if you're a center
stats was nuts.
Absolutely.
Like the upgrade you made from 1 year to the next.
As of now, you have by average contract, you have the 3rd highest paid starting offensive line in the NFL, behind the Eagles and the Lions. And so I don't think they're going to start spending less on offensive line. I think that they're willing to do that.
I would agree.
If you're giving another $10 million a year or so to Luke Wattenberg, all of a sudden you're number one, and you better be number one on the field as well. So there's center.
And they don't strike me as even a top 5 offensive line in the league.
It's tough.
I think they're very reliable. I think they're definitely a top 10 unit in the league, maybe even top 8.
Yep.
I think in pass pro, you could argue maybe even higher. I think it's hard for me to really hear all these pro Broncos offensive line and yet see how the running game just didn't get going. I'm sorry, that isn't all on the running backs. It just cannot be.
Sure. I think pass protection, again, there's the Bo Nix bump.
You got a Bo
So you
Nix
can't ignore
bump.
that. I think run game, when you go back and watch, the Broncos running backs just aren't good at setting up blocks. Or they weren't. Like, there's a lot of just going this way. And I'm curious to see what it looks like with a veteran running back who has a little bit of patience. Who, again, it was just a weird thing where it's like Jaleel, his strength is that he's going to get there before you get there. So he just gets to his spot. Javonte, with the lack of juice, he couldn't afford to be patient in the backfield because he wasn't able to get up to speed and then get through the hole and take advantage. He kind of also had to just get where he's going. And then Audric just had a tendency to run with his head down and just hug the ball and then just run straight in the back of his offensive lineman. And there were moments where it was better, but there's a lot of that. And I think they definitely didn't do any favors. I'm more curious to see what they look like with a running back with a little more patience, with a little more vision than I am willing to say like they were good. The running backs doomed them. But I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, like, okay, there it was. It all worked out.
For sure. I just think they're getting a lot for a run game that was probably
not good.
32nd best in the league, which is to say dead
Bottom
last.
10 at least, yeah.
I hear a lot of assumptions like the Broncos run blocking unit is top 15. And to me, that seems like a massive leap to be making.
Yeah. And it's a lot of just the individual basis, like in terms of like each guy winning their block.
Quinn is probably one of the best run blockers in the entire NFL. I don't disagree with that.
So finished last year 16th in rushing yards, 21st in yards per attempt. So
yeah,
more,
I guess that's
but still
that's
not
really
good.
not that far off.
And if you wound up, we'll see.
No, maybe. But
going back, so centers, you have their options. Guards, Quinn's here for forever. Powers up after next year. So you could draft a replacement. And development.
The way this is panning out, I think if you were to identify of the 5 starting spots on the offensive line, which is the one we can save money on, left guard is probably as high as any.
Yep.
Like, I would love to save some money. I don't know that you can afford a Ben Powers like contract at left guard if you're committing the money you are to Quinn on the right side.
And so then McGlinchey has this year and then 2 more, but you could probably get out of that deal. Bowles this year, then 3 more, but with some pretty easy outs.
Right.
So to me, if you're using a first round pick, you want the premium player, you want to tackle, to me. Like, there's a chance it's center because that's where you could have a hole. I'd imagine they'll try to address that before the draft, though. I don't think they'll go to the draft say, like, oh, we hope our center's there. And if not, we'll just take something off the scrap heap to compete with a guy we don't believe in. Doesn't sound like Sean Payton. So I think you probably draft a tackle, and then you'll have some options. If you wanted to, you could move on from Powers a year early and say, like, okay, instead of having our first round pick sit on the bench, we'll pull this trigger now. We like our depth there, so if we need Palshevsky to start a couple games in place, we can do that, and then we just plug this tackle in at guard for a year, and then bump him outside or do what we need to do. Could do something similar.
Which is what I would do with a draft pick.
It's what I would do as well, and I think that's why Powers. The door is very much open for the Broncos to draft a tackle and then cut Powers after the draft, or even trade him after the draft.
100%.
Because I agree, when you look at, he was getting $13 million a year, or is halfway through with 13. I shouldn't say was. McGlinchey is at 17.5. And if you're
And Bulls just got paid.
Yep. And so if you're saying like there's no inflation, which it isn't realistic for McGlinchey or Powers, which one would you like to keep? McGlinchey at 17.5. Much better deal than Powers at 13.
Yeah.
And so I think that's
Crazy
why
enough.
you probably go the McGlinchey direction. And again, like if you like what he did at guard, believe he's a tackle, you can then do the same thing with McGlinchey, cut him a year early, get your tackle out there, draft and replace a new guy. At
I
the
think
very
this
least,
season, if there's an opportunity to figure out your developmental tackle in seeing if Palcho, Crumb, those kind of guys are viable options, cool.
Yep.
Next offseason, though, is where you really need to explore potentially even drafting a future starter.
Yep. And that's why if you're not willing to go the crazy route, which is draft a tackle, move him to guard, bump Powers out a year early.
Which, by the way, the Saints under Sean Payton did with Andrus Peat.
They did.
So this isn't just fan fiction here necessarily.
If you didn't want to go that crazy kind of like roundabout conspiracy almost type route, you could just use a day 2 pick and say, we're giving the guy a year to develop. And that might be the more realistic, but also they've done it before.
Right.
I would imagine they don't get through day 2 without an offensive lineman, though, unless something crazy happens between now and then.
I know, and yet Sean's kind of gone counter his New Orleans tendencies on that one.
Yeah.
What about running back and tight end?
Tight end. So here's so Evan Ingram, you're hoping you get a few years. There's a chance he shows up. It just doesn't work out. He's too old, whatever it is. If that's the case, obviously you need a tight end. Even if he's good.
It's also both are kind of key positions in this scheme.
Yep. Even if Ingram is good and you say, yep, next couple years, he's our joker tight end, there's still room for a more true inline tight end. Typically, though, it seems like the first round tight ends are more so your move, joker, freaky trait tight ends, and not so much the like, hey, this guy can play inline tight end really. Even like a Sam Laporta winds up being second round type guy, right? Yeah, he was second round because again, it's not Kyle Pitts, it's not Brock Bowers, and this year we did have Colts guy Tyler Warren, who is more that inline, but it just feels to me like that's a little more rare in the first round. So assuming Ingram works out, I know people say like, we'll just draft the next one. I think it'd be a little bit early. I think that's a position where you can kind of wait till you need it to draft it. I don't think you necessarily need, here's our Evan Ingram, and then here's our Kyle Pitts behind him, because honestly, it's a little bit tricky to get an Evan Ingram on the field. You can do it, and Sean's the best at it, but getting 2 of that on the field, that's where it gets really, really tough. And that's why drafting a backup to your joker, it's not something you really do.
Yeah. And then running back, I mean, whether it's a scat back, whether it's more of your power back, I do think you will be making additions to that running back room.
Yep. I agree. I think, again, it's just too tough to say right now what you need. I think
your long-term tight end, you are still searching. So I think, Ingram could work out great, and maybe you're not looking next offseason, but you're always kind of looking.
Again, bring in a Caleb Lohner.
Totally.
Let him see if he develops. And in the 2027 offseason, right? If you're saying we've got we feel good about Lohner, he's the next guy, then you don't need to draft him. But otherwise you probably do. But what you really need is that inline tight end. You really need that, I think. Just because when you look at places, guys who are on the field a lot who can be upgraded, Adam Troutman is kind of top of that list in my mind. It's not that he's bad, and it's not even that that's like the super high value position. It's just that like, could you find a guy on day 2, day 3 who could do a little bit? I think that next offseason you probably could. And I think Troutman also a free agent.
That's a true joker too, that you can really play in any hand.
Exactly, which is always the weird thing about that phrase. I think,
and also, I don't know that you have your joker running back yet. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what RJ turns out to. Adams big on Jam Miller from Bama. We got to see.
It depends on what you have.
Jeremiah Love's the star running back coming into this class. And then you've got a couple intriguing guys at Penn State. Promises to be a decent running back class.
Yep. Running back.
Jonah Coleman from Washington's a fun one.
You just don't know what you need yet. Like there's a world in which you say like, oh, Dobbins, Harvey, perfect fit. We'll extend Dobbins and run it back.
Yep.
There's also a world in which you say, oh, Dobbins not good. Harvey is good. But then what is Harvey good at? Is Harvey the joker? Is Harvey the between the tackles guy? Do they both struggle? Yep. And you're saying same thing as this year. Like, how do you not go get 2 running backs? There's a world in which it happens. So running back I guess is just such a year-to-year position. It's tough to project, but I would agree at some point you probably
feels a
draft
little year-to-year right now.
It can't, especially for the Broncos.
Uncertainty.
For the Broncos, yes. Again, because that inline spot can be upgraded.
Yeah.
And that joker spot, we'll see what Evan Ingram is. If he's good, then you're fine there. But
Sounds
you still
like
want
we're
the inline
looking
guy.
more heavily at offense than anything else.
I think so. I mean, arguably best defense in the NFL.
Yeah,
Probably
it
should
makes
be.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And they've got lots of those guys locked down, and we talked about the D-line conundrum, maybe not as deep as you think it is once you get Zach Allen taken care of.
Yep.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This was awesome, guys. Leave us a thumbs up on the way out. Smash that donate button. Tell your friends about the great stuff we're doing with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and how they can help the youth in our community that we hold so dear. So thank you so much. Loved having everyone. And we'll do this all over again next week. Until then, bye.
We all silly like the mayor.